Hi. In a lot of ways, how we view our daily life can be like a pair of sunglasses. On a good day, it can make things seem darker, and on a cloudy day, it can make it seem even worse. In some ways, we all have an opportunity in the morning when we wake up to see how our day's going to go. We can live it with intentionality and purpose, or we can just see things darker because of how we framed our glasses. In many ways, these sunglasses can be symbolic of how we see our daily lives because of what's happened to us or how we think. And by the end of this short time we have, I want you to be able to see how we can live with intentionality and purpose for our daily lives. Because in many ways, the small moments and big moments in our life determine the overall outcome of how we see our life. Because of what's happened in the past doesn't determine how you're going to end, and that's something that we have to all come to realize. So as I get into this today, I want us to realize that we may be more than we think we are. We may need to start being intentional with our time, and we may need to start doing better with certain things. So let's get into this. A great example of somebody who just started living with intentionality in the Bible is Joshua. In many cases, we see him in the book of Exodus with Moses as one of his followers, and many times we see him just kind of behind the scenes, helping serve and helping be there. And in many ways, we can be like that. But what had changed was that when God told Joshua that he needed to be strong and courageous, this changed because Joshua may not have thought he was capable of that. In many ways, our daily lives can reflect what we think about ourselves. How we view each day can reflect what we think of us. We can wake up in the morning and determine, today isn't going to be much because I'm not much. Or vice versa, today's going to be great because God made me great. Whatever it is, we have to start addressing these types of thoughts. I love this story of Joshua because it shows us that when God started speaking to him, when God told him how he needed him to be, it allowed the Israelites to cross through and to find the promised land. In many ways, some of us have been on the sideline for too long. Some of us have gotten knocked down by some of the things life has thrown on us. But I need to remind you today that you can be strong and courageous. Sometimes starting your morning with thinking of how you can be different today. You can be different than what yourself is telling you. With that, the key points out of Joshua 1:6 shows us, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to my ancestors to give to them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave to you. Do not turn to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. So, again, Joshua isn't just having this confidence in himself. Confidence, in many ways, in our own lives, has to be something that comes from our obedience to God, in the way we live daily, in the way we see the opportunities daily. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But again, we have to take today as a day and a new opportunity to be better and to do better with ourselves and with others. And that's what I want to get at today. And the ability for Joshua, what changed from him just being basically somebody who was helping out in the crowd to become somebody who was leading the Israelites, was what God said to him. And that was to be strong and courageous. And he says it twice. Isn't that interesting? He says, be strong and courageous. And then he says, be very strong and very courageous. And following that confidence that he can have from this is from obeying what we saw later in that passage, that he has to obey what God is telling him to do. Obey that he might not turn to the left or turn to the right. And some mornings, I know personally, when I wake up, I'm not always feeling like that. I don't always feel like I want to focus and live with intentionality today. But really, when it comes down to it, the thing that we're gifted that's most precious in our life is the time, to some degree. The time that involves these moments with people, this time that involves these memories that we're going to keep and look back on towards the end of your life. Whatever it is, we have to be grateful for that and try to assess that. The next point I want to look at is Joshua's internal strength wasn't just because of him. And a lot of what happens today is we have overconfident people or different people that have a false sense of confidence. And that's not what I'm trying to display here today. But our confidence can come from our obedience to God and what He's telling us to do. Secondly, Joshua's strength, I bet he had some days where he woke up and just didn't feel like doing this anymore. I mean, 40 years in the wilderness, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, think about it. You have different people from different beliefs and backgrounds around you that you may have to come and step up and be the difference in their life too, that will prove that God has done something special in you too. So again, confidence comes from obedience, and that's an important thing, that when we realize how we see ourselves is not how God sees us too, that Joshua probably didn't see himself as strong and courageous, and that's why God had to tell him that. And in many ways, we need to remind ourselves that we need to be strong and courageous every day, and not just for ourselves, but for Him, and to show others Him. So let's move on to our second point here, that another person that didn't really see himself or his daily life in a clear way was Gideon. And we've recently talked about Gideon, but you see the story of him starts out with him in a wine press. He's gathering wheat in a wine press, okay? He was an oppressed people. He was part of a people that were very oppressed. And what happened is this angel comes to him, angel of the Lord, comes to him and says, "Be strong, you mighty warrior of the Lord." What changed? If that didn't happen, what would have changed in his life? His days were being counted, and they were counting him out to some degree, that he was just nobody. He wasn't going to do anything. He wasn't going to do anything impactful to help stop this oppression of the people. And in his time, there was a group called the Midianites that were oppressing his group that he was in, that were taking his crop, taking all his food, doing terrible things to his people because of what Israel had fallen into. And in the book of Judges, where this story of Gideon is from, it's very interesting because in many ways, people did what was right in their own eyes. That's a common theme of the book of Judges, and that's why it's probably one of the harshest books in the Bible, is because they did what was right in their own eyes. And part of living every day with intentionality and purpose starts with us not doing what's right in our own eyes. It starts with us seeing ourselves how God sees us and seeing others the same way too, with purpose, with value, with strength, with respect, and with dignity. With that said, some key points from the story of Gideon. The Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." So what you see throughout that story of Gideon is he was still afraid at points. He was still fearful of what could come. He was still fearful that he might fail. And he did certain things that show us that. He was asked to go destroy his father's worship idol of Baal. And he did it at night because he was so afraid. Let me remind you that obedience comes with confidence in God and what He said, but it doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes it takes doing these little steps daily of little things that lead us to becoming that great and mighty warrior that God's called you to be. So, moving on quickly, our first key point today is make today count. We really only have today. You know, there's that cliche expression that don't count the days, make the days count. Sometimes the days are counting us out. And we really, because of how we wake up and how we determine that our day's going to go and how we see ourselves. And again, how we see our daily lives is a reflection of how we see ourselves. If you think you're valuable to God and you think you could value others in that same way, you wouldn't just want to stay in bed all day. You wouldn't want to stay doing the same thing. You'd want to help people. You want to do good things. And sometimes we can get in this place of isolation with ourselves that our brain can be negatively biased. It is. It's true. It's scientific that our brain is negatively biased. And in many ways, we have to start addressing those thoughts. We have to start realizing that you are more than what you think you are, because God sees you as more than what you think you are. And we saw that through Gideon and Joshua. So a quick scripture reference is Ephesians 5:15. It says, "Look carefully, then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time." And again, a theme of this message is living with purpose and intentionality. Ephesians 5:15 through 16 shows us that our time is valuable, and we have to be intentional with it. And sometimes what we do with our time is a reflection of how we see ourselves. Key point number 2 is the responsibility we have. We don't like this word. I don't like this word too sometimes. But with the ability we've been given, there comes a responsibility. Recently, I was talking about with some of the staff here at FCC, Matthew 25:14 through 30. And it's this parable that shows Jesus talking to the disciples about this master giving his workers money. And each worker was given a certain amount of money due to their ability. And sometimes we can wake up in the morning and say, look, I don't have much. I don't have much to do. Might not be money, might be friends, might be family, but I don't have much. Sometimes we wake up like that. Sometimes we wake up and our day just seems shot from the beginning because we see how little we have. But let me remind you, if you check out this story in Matthew 25:14, verse 30, it shows the parable of the 10 talents. So Jesus tells this parable about how this master leaves for a while, gives each servant something. And what happens is the servant who was given the least didn't do anything with it. He became irresponsible because even at some points he blames his master for why he didn't do this. And in many times in our lives we forget that we have a responsibility for the gifts God has given you. We have a responsibility every day to make something with what God has given you. Bear with me, we're almost there. So, upon the master's return, he comes back. His first servant did well. He earned him interest. The second servant did well. The third worker decided to go hide it in the dirt and quit. He did, because he feared that maybe the master wouldn't be appreciative of what he could do. Who knows? What the point is that we have to do something with what God has given us. We're given a day. Each day is a gift. And that's what I want you to see here, that each day is an opportunity to do something and bless others and bless Him for what He's given you. And if I can leave you with one thing, it's I want to dare you to try and start living with this intentionality. You see, that last servant just hid it in the dirt. He gave up. He quit because he wasn't given as much as the others. And sometimes it's not always about how much you're given. It's about what you do with what you have. And in many ways, some of us discount ourselves because, oh, I don't have this talent, I don't have this. If I was more this way, I'd be better. Whatever it is, we have to stop thinking like that, because that negative bias that your brain internally has about yourself isn't how God sees you. Like I said, I gave you those two examples of Gideon and Joshua, that God saw them as strong and courageous, and that's when their life changed. That's when they were able to make an impact in the community around them. And secondly, Gideon didn't just sit in the wine press the rest of the story. He had to get up. Some of us are home watching things or just letting the days pass us by without living with purpose. And that's not how we can do this. That's not how your life is going to be fulfilling. Jesus says that He comes that we might have life to the fullest. And I truly believe that, because with Him, we can see the true value of every day, every person, and every little moment that passes us by. But sometimes we discount ourselves because of how we see ourselves. And like I said, we have to get up and go. We have to believe what He said about you. So finally, I want to just point out two things. The power of community. So again, our brains are negatively biased. So if I sat home all day just on my phone and did nothing with anyone else, I would have this negative bias of myself. That confirms these negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. By being isolated, we isolate ourselves from the thoughts that we shouldn't have. You see, iron sharpens iron. That's Proverbs 27:17. We've seen this. And in many ways, scientifically, this scripture can be backed up, because socially, when we're around other people, it helps us have this bonding hormone that actually relieves stress and actually brings some fullness to ourselves. And we need other people. On the other hand, being in isolation brings the stress hormone that we've come to know. And you're going to be more stressed when you're not around people. God has created you to make your days count. God hasn't just called you to sit around and do nothing and waste your time. He's called you to be impactful to the people around you. If I can encourage you of one thing today, is I dare you, please, try and live with this intentionality every day, because it truly is a gift. It's an opportunity to be better, to do better, to see people for the real value that they have. And that's truly what I want to hit today. And many times, these sunglasses, like I said, are symbolic because of something that happened to us in the past that makes us think a certain way. Something that may have come to make us not like how we see the world, that darkens our view of everyone else and ourselves. But really, what God is looking for us to do is to take the sunglasses off, take the view off, and let Him give you a new sight here. With every day, we have the opportunity, we have the gift to bless others and be a blessing unto the Lord with what we've been given. And it's a waste sometimes, because in our culture, we've gone through such an isolating time that we like being alone. We like doing things by ourselves, but that's not how you were designed. You were designed for a purpose and something specific. And the thing that breaks my heart is when people don't see the value that their life has. No matter how small or how little they think they have, it has value, and it does. And if we can start seeing people with this type of value, and every day with the type of value that I'm trying to display here, that it's going to change your day-to-day. It is. Because like I said, your day-to-day is going to eventually become what is your overall theme of your life. And if your theme every day can be valuable to other people and to yourselves, and to see yourself how God sees you, I think you're going to be very well off. And you're going to live a life that's fulfilling to others and yourself and to God. And He's going to be pleased with you. Thank you for watching this. Please leave a comment, say amen. Whatever you want to do, share this with somebody that needs to hear it today. God bless. Thank you.